experience and knowing what to expect. It's a non-stop nightmare. And you have to have a team who can be dedicated only to that. Especially if there are any sort of visitors from other parts of the country or other parts of the world. They need advice about accommodation, they need help with transport, they don't understand anything about the local environment. We were lucky in Milnerton, we had the terrific My City bus service from the central city, which was actually wonderful. But how many South African cities offer you that opportunity? There are so many factors to take into consideration that I used to think that we ought to stay with a local arrangements committee. Conferences have got too big and too complex for that. One of the things you have to have is a proper ICT support system. We all know how appalling it is when you're in a conference hall and the mic doesn't work and there's nobody there and somebody has to be sent out to run to find Joe in the technical department who actually is at lunch, or whatever the case may be. And ever since we've moved our conferences into big conference centers, I think we've had such smooth running. I used to be very critical of the ICC. I remember the year we moved to the ICC, and mine was one of the voices that said, this is far too grand, far too fancy. I think Naomi was president at the time. She took a lot of flack for that when we were up in Nelspruit or Nelstroom. A smaller city in a difficult province. It happened to be one of the conferences where a lot of us got food poisoning from the rather difficult serving in a tent under a tree in very hot climate with people bringing stuff in that wasn't really good food. All these problems, and it's very hard to say to smaller facilities, look, you can't cope with 800 people. But the fact of the matter is 800 people is a lot. Just in casual conversation coming down now to this conference, various friends at home said, oh, how big is your conference? You say 800, they say, wow, that's a big conference. 800 is a huge conference to have to manage and accommodate, and you can't do it without professional help. And I think also, as we were saying the other evening, the question of economy of scale is very important. An organization that arranges conferences as a profession knows where to go for the best deals, knows how to arrange the best deals, and although they make money out of it, and I don't know what portion of our budget, I've often wondered what portion of our membership goes, for example, to Scatterlings, and I'm only naming them because they're our organizers. But even that, you're paying for somebody to take the hassle out of your life, and all you have to make are the professional decisions. You even have some sort of idea of accommodation in a place that you don't know anything about. You have some idea of how you get from A to B, and is it safe to walk from here to there? I saw an advert for the ICC that said, oh, it's 10 minutes walk from the beach. Well, we all know from conference in 2007 that 10 minutes walk from the beach was a lethal walk. It might be better now, but in 2007 it was horrible. And everybody thought you could just walk from the beach to the ICC, and it didn't work. These are the things that you need to have with a local arrangements committee and a professional conference committee. So I would like to say that I think there are factors, not just for cost cutting, but for organizational cutting. I think that some of this conference is still a bit too complex, and I think that it would be nice to have the volunteers very much on site. And some of them, I agree with some of those comments, I think they get a bit crotchety. And they don't know, and perhaps that's because they haven't been well informed. And I'm honest, I keep asking, are there any papers for the AGM? And they look blind and say, I don't know. Somebody ought to, where's the venue? Someone didn't know where any one of the halls was. That sort of basic stuff would stop the poor old volunteers from getting a lot of flack. But in general, I think one should cut down on the complexity, the frills, rather than the money. You can make a very professional conference with perhaps slightly fewer frills, but not cut down on the money side of it if it buys us a smooth conference for 800 people. Each one of us is one of those 800 people, and each one of us says, oh, it's so expensive, and my employer won't pay for me, and so on. The first conference I ever went to, which was in Chicago in 1985, was a life changer for me. And somebody very professional got up and said, if you are going to a conference or a meeting for continuing professional development, and that really is the basis of all conferences, never mind points, it's what it does to you, you must expect to pay some of that cost yourself. And I've never forgotten that, and I think it is a very important thing to remember. Conferences have three components. They have the cost of the conference attendance and registration, whatever. They have the cost of accommodation, and they have the cost of transport. I believe that everybody who is a professional person should budget in their personal budget for a year. If they're thinking they might want to go to a conference, they should probably budget for one of those three elements to come to their own account. Maybe it's the airfare. Maybe an airfare return costs 2,000 rand. Divide that by 12, it's a monthly budget. Can you afford to put away a 12th of an airfare so that when you go to conference, you can pay for your airfare? Your organization can probably pay for your registration. That's what organizations quite like to do. They pay for professional registration. Accommodation and per diem often comes in with that. And I think that that is how we should be thinking as professionals, as part of our support for our conference. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Claire. Colleagues, where do we go from here? We can do a cost investigation, but we need to start Conference 2020. Yes, please, Leila.
Before Leila, I was standing this side. Thank you. I just want to find out if the results are preliminary or final. And if it is final, I mean...
excuse me, sir. There's no roving mic. If you need to speak, you need to come here, please. And I recognize Leila. So please, would you join here? And we will gladly hear from you after Leila.
Take him off screen.
Please take away the roving mics. There are no roving mics. Roving mics will not be recognized. Luwani, I didn't see it was you in the shadow. Please go ahead.
Thank you, it's me.
I beg your pardon, I'm sorry, colleagues. It's starting to generate. Luwani, kindly step back because I recognized Leila. I recognized you afterwards. Don't go too far away. Thank you.
Thanks. I wouldn't have minded if he spoke before me. It wasn't a problem, but from here. Nora and I have both been on committees that organized conferences in the year dot at two separate higher education institutions. And even way back then with smaller student numbers at institutions, it was a nightmare. Logistically, it's a nightmare. Hotels and other accommodation venues are never normally near academic institutions. And with the volatility currently on all our campuses, organizing and planning for conferences of this size at a university institution is a no-go. Even at my own institution these days, our faculty conferences, etc., there are normally 100 to 200 people. We are booking at outside venues.
Thank you very much. Luwani, and then you.
Thank you, Nikki. I just wanted to find out if the results are preliminary or are they final. Because if they are preliminary or if they're final, we needed to find out the recommendations from the team. But if there's no recommendation, we just see the graph. Is it really important to discuss this issue? We have had previous views on whether we should remain in the same three provinces and all that. But if the results does not show the complete this conclusion of the study and the way forward from the people who participated in the survey, the team that we have entrusted to do the survey, it means we didn't give them opportunity to give a full report back to us and what recommendations thereof. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luwani. I'm taking the last comment, please, colleagues. We're running out of time. We need to be out of here at 1 o'clock.
I am Venigiani from UNISUL. I want to comment briefly on RETIP. I was disappointed yesterday when there was even a suggestion of combining rhetoric with Gaelic. I really want to say, when you visited Zululand in this roadshow, as you are saying, at that AL15 venue, students want to be part of this, and I want to advocate that we really vigorously resuscitate rhetoric, because I can see so many young people here, and our paper that came out in the Innovation June 2019 says public librarians do not publish because they lack research skills, and it came out even the other day. So I really wish we resuscitate rhetoric, and we will see our students participating in numbers.
I thank you for that, but this is the conversation about conference. You're going to get a chance, right, as soon as we finish this one, to talk about roadshow, because that is where the issue of rhetoric is going to come in. Thank you very much for your passion. And the point about the students wanting to come to conference is noted. Colleagues, what do we do about this going forward? We've reported back to you, we don't have a costing, but what do we cost against? What are the models we're talking about? Is that what you want us to do? Do you want us to put our efforts into other projects? We can't do all of it in 1 year that's left. Where do we go from here? Where we service the very valid issues around conference. We saw some of them in the data analysis. But on the other hand, we also have some misunderstandings around conference and the expenses that conference costs create. Okay, so I propose, yes, Robert.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm not quite sure then about the report, whether it is final or it's not final, but based on my experience, when I was president, we never, at that stage, we did not use ICC venues such as this. I remember the one conference we had, I think it was in Rustenburg, and I moved out. I think then, you know, my term ended, and we now are using ICCs. So if you were to ask me, based on both, you know, my